Welcome to Inspiring Women with ADHD. I'm Renee Allen, your host, and I'm so excited to be here today. Two things rev up my energy when I'm recording this podcast. One is hearing that song, because I've probably mentioned before that was my son and daughter who sang it several years ago when they were in college. And I just love it. It makes me happy. And the other thing is saying the intro, saying, Welcome to Inspiring Women with ADHD. It's so hard for me to say anything that's rehearsed or that needs to be exact. I don't know if you're that way. So I have to slow it down a little bit from my normal talking. And it may not sound slow to you, but it feels slow to me. And I was just curious, is it like that for you? Do you have a harder time? I mean, I do talk slower sometimes, and I'm sure you do too, but do you have a harder time when you're consciously talking slower? It's, I don't know if that makes any sense, but there's times that I've noticed, like if I'm reading something, it feels too slow, or if I even have a pause in a conversation. I guess it depends on the person. If I know somebody really well, I can have a lot of pauses with them. I could stand and just, you know, sit, whatever we're doing. We could just have times when we're not talking. But if it's somebody else, I feel like a pause is awkward. Like, I need to fill it. I need to fill it. I was just curious if you feel that way, if that's just the need of a brain that has something that always needs to contribute. If that makes any sense. And that's actually what I'm going to talk about a little bit today is all the thoughts, all the ideas, all the things that are in our heads all the time. And I did do another episode about all the ideas that we have, and those are more like things I need to do this, I need to do that, I need to do this, I need to do that, those kind of ideas. And then there's also just the thoughts that come up that are just there for other reasons, like evaluating. I love to evaluate things. I like to take something and figure out the whys, the hows, or is that even really true? Anything I hear, my brain just starts spiraling and going off into some tangent. And yeah, it's a challenge. I'm sure you have lots of ways that this happens in your mind too. And some great visuals are, when you're on a computer and you have a tab and you open a new tab because it's a new place on your computer. It might be an online store, it might be your email, it might be a website, it might be another website that website tells you to go to, or it might be something that just pops in your mind you're curious about. So then you open a new tab and pretty soon you look and you've got 20 tabs and they're all really tiny and you're thinking, I don't want to see this many tabs. Do you ever do that? And then some of them are even the same tabs that you didn't realize you had on there three times or something like that. And that is a super good representation of our brain sometimes, that it keeps going in all these directions. But at the same time, I think we're trying to stay on top of all of them at the same time. And we go back to, wait, what was I just thinking about? Or what was I just doing? Or maybe we forget. Do you ever do that? You look at a tab and you think, oh, I forgot. That's why I got on the computer. I opened that one and that was an hour ago. So that happens with our thoughts too. Another way I see that on my computer, and I don't know if anybody else does this but me, but I take a lot of screenshots of things that I either don't want to forget or that I want to share. And sometimes I share them, sometimes I do. Did I say sometimes I share them? Sometimes I do. Sometimes I share them, sometimes I don't. I actually stayed on top of that thought. Yay! But I I end up with a very cluttered desktop. And, I've learned this little trick with a MacBook. I don't know if other kinds of computers do this, where you can stack them, which is nice. It clears it up while you're actually looking at it. But then if you actually click on the screenshot stack or click on the photo stack or the PDF or all those things, I don't know how it happened so fast. I could have hundreds on there. And I do spend time every once in a while thinking, I got to clean up these screenshots. I need to go through them and throw some away and spend time doing things like that because they do take up room on my computer. But but why? It's just an indication of what our brains do. Another indication is when we're talking and we often switch subjects or go off on a deeper thought of what we were talking about. Let's say we're telling a story about something and we bring up, oh, my daughter was there with her dog. Oh, do you hear about what happened to her dog? And then you just go up, it's a completely different story. And you just keep going and going. And depending on who you're talking to, your level of closeness to them or their understanding of you or how much they maybe like you. Some people are completely fine with that and are happy to follow and say, "Oh, yeah." They're interested in it. Whereas other people, you can just see it in their eyes. They're lost. they're they're like, "What are you doing?" And in fact, my daughter said that to me one day, when my youngest daughter, how did she phrase it? She just said, "Mom, sometimes when I'm talking to you, I can't keep track of what you're talking about because my brain is bouncing around and she doesn't have the framework for that, so she can't follow. She can't follow. So, it's just an indication of what our brains do and how they can go, 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 go. And I hope it doesn't sound like I dominate on every conversation. I don't. I try to reel it in. I try to bring it back. And sometimes you forget about what you were talking about in the first place, or you realize I need to, I need to curtail this. I need to stop this. I've already taken up my time. It, there is give and take. I'm not saying that every person who does this is dominating a conversation. I don't feel like I do that for the most part. I do it with people who are okay with it. I don't know if you have people like this in your life who are a lot quieter and don't like to talk a lot. They like to sit and smile and answer questions, but they can't do a monologue. They can't do a monologue, and they enjoy hearing monologues. And I wouldn't even know that was a thing, but my older brother is a lot quieter than I am. And I used to even say he's the oldest in our family, but it's more like I'm the oldest because I talk more. I don't know why I said that. That was just a teenage thing to say. Kind of like I take over, that kind of thing. And then one of my younger brothers, so I have four brothers, one older brother, three younger brothers. One of my younger brothers is really quiet too. And both of these brothers are very happy to be in a room and sit and kind of chuckle or smile or add a few comments here or there. But they're very happy to have other people take more of that responsibility. I don't know if it's a responsibility, but it takes the pressure off of them. And I have a few kids like that too, who it's nice for them. They don't want to be overshadowed for sure, but sometimes it's nice for them not to have the pressure in a social setting to do a lot of talking, more just to be more of a listener and an occasional person who talks. So anyway, I've heard from enough people like my brother or some other people who have said, don't feel like you need to give equal time to everyone in a conversation because some people are really relieved when they don't have to have equal time. Does that make sense? That was just one of my tangents. Yeah. But back to the thoughts. Okay, so the thoughts, these don't have to be great ideas. These are just thoughts. These are curiosities. These are stories that come up in our heads. These are memories that get triggered, and then we're going, oh, yeah. And then remembering all these connections. I think of this spider web, these connections, and this connects with that, and that connects with that. And it can be exciting. So that could be part of your thought process of the excitement of how things connect and how you relate to people because of those connections. These are all really great things. They can also at times max us out. Does that ever happen to you where your brain is just like those tabs on a computer screen, all of a sudden you have so many, you don't know which one to look at. You don't know which one to look at. You're looking at one and you're thinking, oh, but I want to look at the other one. And you go look at the other one. Oh, but I need to look at that. And that happens to me from time to time where my mind's just about to explode because, and then the energy comes up inside. I haven't, not that I know of, had true anxiety, but I feel very anxious inside when that happens. It's like my heart rate goes up a little bit, and I'm just thinking, my brain's about to explode. That's the only way I can think of. There's, it's like the water's bubbling up. It's boiling on the pot and it's going to overflow. And that's what it feels like. I don't know that thoughts can truly overflow, but maybe we find ways to do that, like being able to talk to somebody or writing in a journal. I haven't written in a journal in years, at least that I can think of. But when I was in high school, I wrote in a journal every single day. When I was in college, I wrote in my journal every single day. And I think it was really nice for me to just get my thoughts out. And, and it's a way to also think through things, not just get the thoughts out like, ugh. But it's also a way to process your thoughts and make decisions, but also just kind of feel some validation by getting something on paper. So that was, I guess, my therapy or something through high school and in college. But as I got older, I tried to be consistent with it because I thought this is important to journal. You have children, you can look back. To me, that's actually more important. If I had those things written down, the what boy I wrote about in high school or gaining too much weight in college or whatever was on my mind, it seemed more important to me to journal when I had children, but I was never consistent with it. I didn't do a very good job with it. And it's really interesting if I don't know if you've done this before, depending on how old you are, to look at different seasons of your life and how some things were very doable for you and other seasons it's like I can't do that anymore. I can't do that anymore. I mean, I majored in English and now I can't get myself to sit and read a book. I really can't. I just can't. And that changed, I don't know, 7 or 8 years ago when I had to realize being in a book club, I can't even pay attention to what I just read. And now I got to go back and read it again. And then I'd start the book again, pick it up the next day and, oh, what was I reading? But I could not retain it. I couldn't pay. It wasn't that I can't learn something. I just couldn't pay attention to it for some reason. So that's when I got into audiobooks and thank heavens for audiobooks because then I could be in a book club. I'm not in a book club now, but if someone mentions a book to me or recommends a book and I think, yeah, I'd like to, read that book. It's done through audio. And even with that, it takes a while to make that picture in my mind. Sometimes I have to repeat the first chapter, so or read it more than once. But back to the thoughts. So full disclosure here. I had to stop because I had done that. I had, kind of like did you ever play at a creek when you were little? Oh my gosh. We used to play along creeks where I grew up in Northern California. And sometimes if we wanted to cross the creek and we didn't want to get our shoes wet, we would hop from rock to get across and kind of, jump across to this rock and hopefully it wasn't slippery or whatever and you didn't end up in the creek. But that's what I just did with my thoughts. I hopped from rock to rock and I really didn't know how I got there. So I had to say very slowly back to our ideas. That was my thought process of, okay, where was I? And I had to stop because I I couldn't recall. But I'm back to it now. What I want to talk about next is okay, so we have all these thoughts. We know we have all these thoughts. And sometimes they're they've gotten so plentiful that we can't act. It's almost like we're we're frozen or we're paralyzed in a way because we have too many thoughts going on in our heads. And it's whether it's what to do next or just maxing out. And so I wanted to share with you a few things that help me, and I hope they help you. And anything that I share, I know that for some people, it will help them tremendously. Another person is like, that didn't work, that didn't work. But that's why I want to offer more than one thing because every method doesn't work for every person. All of our brains, even though we might all have ADHD, our executive dysfunction may show up in different ways, or it might be a season of your life where, yeah, that would have worked 10 years ago, but now it just doesn't. So I'm going to offer you a few ideas and see if maybe one of them helps you. Okay, the first one that helps me, and maybe it seems like you're diving deeper into ADHD, but I find it relaxing. So, one of the things that people with ADHD do is hyperfocus. And I don't know if that's seen as a negative. Sometimes people view it as a negative. Some people think that's why I'm successful because I can hyperfocus. And some people think that's why I'm not because I'm hyperfocusing. But if you're completely maxed out with all these things going on in your head, and one of those things sounds like something that you just want to deep dive in, do it. Do it. You might be curious about, I'll give you an example. You're thinking about a concert. You want to go to a concert, and you might be curious, what year did I go to see this person in the 80s? I saw a bunch of concerts in the 80s, and I've seen some of those people again in the last 5 years. So instead of spending all this time, just maxing out my tabs, looking into the possibilities of this or that with a whole bunch of other tabs open in my brain, I might just relax my brain a little bit by letting it answer a question. And going into hyperfocus mode and doing some research. Maybe research isn't fun for you. Hyperfocusing can show up in a lot of ways. But I've learned with a Google Doc on my computer, a blank page on my computer that I can always find. I can always find it is so valuable because how many papers have I written on that I've lost? How many notebooks have I had that I've written in and then I can't make sense of the writing, or I don't know which book I wrote in and wrote that, or where it is, or anything. So a Google Doc or something on your computer where you can always go back to it and find that answer or add to it is really helpful. And I've done that where I wrote my concert history and I found that there were websites that showed every concert that Whitney Houston gave in the 80s or every, whatever. So you can actually do research and just, satisfy the need of that brain to go, 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 go into one area. I also did this with just things that would max out my brain, like not being able to remember somebody's birthday. And then I'd think, I'm going to make a Google Doc of birthdays. And some might think, oh, you could just do that, on your Google Calendar. That's not what I wanted. I don't want to look at a calendar and go, okay, whose birthday's in June? I wanted a piece of paper, or a Google Doc where I could just look and see when was my grandma born? When was my grandpa born? Who lived the longest out of my grandparents? All these questions that come up in my mind, I could just answer them. It might take a while to research it, but I could have it all there. And if I ever have that thought come up again, I know where to find it. I know where to find it. It might not be in my brain, but my brain helped put it on that file, and now I always have that information. So that's one kind of going down a rabbit hole that I love to do that's helped me. Another one is just organizing. And I know that organizing things can be hard for people with ADHD because things can get cluttered easily, whether it's a closet or a kitchen drawer that you can never find something in, or paperwork. I'm raising my hand really high with the paperwork. But if you're able to just take a tiny bit of that, maybe it's your makeup drawer. Do you have a makeup drawer? I have a drawer with my makeup in. And sometimes I'll go, actually, I don't do this on purpose, but sometimes I'll go in the bathroom and try to find eyeliner or whatever it is in the bathroom in my makeup drawer. And just to give myself a break from whatever else was going on, I'll spend the next hour organizing that drawer. I'm going to sharpen all the little eyeliner pencils, and I'm going to put this into this, and I'm going to find a container for that. Sometimes making sense of stuff and putting it in order, whether it's a thought on paper or Google Doc, or just seeing a drawer that looks better, will free up your mind. I'm a big believer in that. I don't understand the whole feng shui of everything. I've never studied that, but I do know the big difference between seeing something that's cluttered and seeing something that has order and doesn't have a lot in it. And when I do that, it relaxes me. It helps calm that elevated sense that happens with so many ideas. So that's my first bit of advice or recommendation is hyper focusing on something just to have clarity, whether it's in thoughts or have a clearer mind because you've been able to see something more organized. But I also just think the monotony of doing something like, I'm going to organize the books on, the children's books on a shelf, just sitting there and going into a mode of, it's almost like you're a machine, just kind of, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this. There's order, and that order is very calming for our brains. And you even see it with kids. You see kids sometimes just taking their Hot Wheels and lining them up. And I think it's doing the same thing for them. Who knows? I'm not a psychiatrist, but just from observation, I think it's calming for them too. It's calming for them too. Another thing that really helps me when I'm in that, my brain's gonna explode mode is just to get up. And sometimes I have to say the words out loud. Get up, put on some shoes, go outside. Or get up, go for a walk. Or just get up. I mean, just changing your environment. And for me, it doesn't work really to go into a different room in my house because, as I noticed years ago, when I'm in my own house, it's like every room I go into, I see a to-do list. I see more things that I need to do. I'm always on that scanning mode for, oh yeah, I need to do, I didn't do that. I need to do that. I need to do that. So just getting out of your house, your apartment, wherever you are, if you can go outside, just look at a tree, look at the sky, hear a bird sing, any of that. Go for a walk. The physical activity is definitely helpful, but just changing your scenery will help quite a bit. It will help your mind go, ah. If you can't go outside, if you like taking a hot bath, a shower, even that change in temperature in your body gives that ah. And sometimes it's hard to tell ourselves that it's okay to do something different, but sometimes you have to do something different because you're really not doing any good, just kind of spiraling out of control. I remember my friend told me once because I loved going out to the hammock. I think I mentioned this once, some of those patterns that you get into of, I'm going to go get the mail and then I'm going to sit in the hammock and I'll read it. And that was really calming to me. And one time a friend was over and we were out in the hammock and the kids were playing and I was just looking at the house. And just from the side of the house, I knew like the dishes weren't done. I knew there was a lot in there that needed to be done, that if I was inside, I could be productive. And I was outside sitting on the hammock looking up at the sky and the trees that looked like lace, and it was beautiful and it was calming. But part of me was feeling guilty, like I need to be in there. And she told me those things will always be there. but you have to do things like this. And I've really taken that advice because we all only have 24 hours in a day. There will always be things that we wish we could do or that need to be done that won't be done, and that's okay. And once I realized that it doesn't all have to be done, taking time away to do something that calms your mind, that's good for your body, that's good for your soul, that lets your mind just relax so it's not overflowing. It's like taking that pot off of the heat on the stove and just letting it bubble back down, letting it calm down. We need to do that for ourselves. And exercise, if you love to exercise, fitting that in when you can. You may have that in your day. And that's one thing I've noticed since I moved 2 years ago. I have not been consistent with that being my first thing in the morning thing. And it made a huge difference when I did. I'm going to start doing that again. And when I do, I'm going to have a challenge on my website for anybody else who wants to make that a part of their day every day because it is really key for being on top of things and having a healthier mind, healthier body. At the same time, it's very easy to get out of habits. It's hard to get them back in, but once we get them back in, we're going, we're going. But exercise, so you could go outside for a walk, you could go outside, you could just look and listen, or you could go exercise somewhere. Another thing, and this will be the last one that at least at this point I'm planning to talk about right now, is breathing in a more conscious way. And if you know this about me, I'm a yoga teacher. It's crazy sometimes I think about that I'm a yoga teacher because it's never something I thought someday I want to be a yoga teacher. It's just that I did a lot of exercise. I worked out every day. Yoga videos came onto the scene. I thought, I don't know if I'm interested in that. I did one and loved it and started incorporating that into my workout schedule. And for whatever reason, it made it made such a huge impact on me emotionally and mentally, which I didn't realize I needed because the working out hard helped with that too. It made it so I have the energy now. I'm not as tired. I feel good about myself. I did something great. My body feels a little better. I'm stronger. Hopefully, I'm healthier. Hopefully, I'm not doing something too hard. But when I did the yoga, it was more a reflection of what was going on inside of me. And whatever I learned while doing yoga about myself, I didn't just have in that half hour or that hour. I had it later that day. I had it later that week. I had it a year later. It was changing the inside of me. And not because it was teaching me some belief, it was just teaching me more about myself and how to recognize what was happening in myself. And so that's why I started teaching it. I didn't even get certified for at least 10 years. I just started teaching it at schools, women's group. Anybody want to do yoga? I'll help you do yoga. Well, I'll lead a yoga class. And there were no certification programs in my area at that point. It wasn't until we moved away that I found one. But anyway, I'm not saying you need to do yoga, but if you want to do yoga, I'd love to show you how it works with women with ADHD because I didn't know I had ADHD for a long time while I was doing yoga, like meaning teaching for years. And I saw that I was teaching differently than other people did. Not that, everything I do is so original or anything, but a lot of things that I did, like instead of just going from this pose to that pose, like if there was a still pose, I'm always moving my body in between and inviting them to move in between. And it was because I needed it. I needed to get out that energy, get out that energy, get out that energy. But also the curiosity, all the ideas that you have in your head, that curiosity can go toward you and what's going on. All those things that we have with us, those gifts that we have with ADHD, they can make it harder to be mindful because we're like, how can I be mindful? I keep thinking of other things. But it can also make it even more doable because you can get curious about yourself. And then once you realize that you can observe what you're thinking about, then that becomes really fascinating. Or observe what's happening in your body. That can be fascinating. And one of my friends who does not have ADHD, by the way, she said to me once, like, oh, yeah, when I was mentioning something, like, she goes, yeah, the things that we yoga teachers nerd out about. And I thought, no, it's not like, oh, I'm so curious about the science of this. No, it's more like my brain can keep thinking about more things because it sees more things to think about. I don't know. To me, it wasn't a I don't like that word, nerd. Anyway, it's not like it's a bad word, but I would never use that to describe myself. So back to the breathing. Yoga doesn't have to be, getting on a mat and doing a warrior two or a downward facing dog. It doesn't have to be that. It can be going on a hike. It could be sitting on your couch while you're visiting with a whole bunch of people. It is really just the ability to calm the brain, notice what's happening in your thoughts, and get it to calm down. There's actually a quote, and of course, I don't know who it's by, but it says yoga is the art of quieting the mind. And some people say, but I don't want my mind quiet. It's not really about like, oh, it has to be quiet all the time. It's just giving it a break. We go to sleep every night to give ourselves a break, to give our bodies the ability to rest, recover, rejuvenate for the next day. And mindfulness during the day, mindful breathing during the day, whether it's actually a yoga class, going on a hike, and as you're walking up the hill, you start breathing at the same pace of your footsteps. Have you ever noticed that? Uh, it's very soothing. It's very meditative. Same with running. If you're a runner, which I was for maybe 2 years. I always hated it before, and I pretty much hated it since. But for whatever reason, I got that gift of loving running for those few years. But the thing that I loved was the pace that I get into, especially when it was snowing. I lived in Utah at the time, and I loved to run on the snow. If you walk on the snow, you slip and fall. You can slip and fall. When you're running, it's like a horse, that when you trot, it's bump, 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 and you gallop and it's smooth. It doesn't seem to make sense, but it actually happens. You think, I can't go faster, and then all of a sudden you're galloping and it's smooth. It's like that with running on the snow. I can't go faster, I'll trip. You don't. It's like you land softly. It's super soothing, it's super beautiful, and it just becomes this meditative experience. You can even have that sitting on your couch and being surrounded by a ton of people. You could have it in an airport, sitting and waiting and thinking, this is stressful or whatever. Any any setting that you're in that you need a break from, or you want to just enjoy more, all you have to do is stop your thoughts for half a second and just notice your breathing. It doesn't even have to change. You can just notice whatever breathing is happening. So let's try that right now. If you want, even if you're driving, you can do this. This won't make you fall asleep or anything. But so just you're driving, you're in your house, wherever you are, just stop for a second. I'll stop talking for a second and just notice your breathing. And then on top of that, notice what your body does when it's breathing, how it moves. And maybe you're already noticing different sounds that you didn't know were there. Maybe the feel of the air, especially if you're outside. And you can even see if you can slow down your breathing a bit. and to really get in more of that fresh air, that oxygen. If you feel like the base of the throat, kind of where the collarbones are, expand as you breathe in, gets wide like a puffer fish or a balloon. And then in turn, the chest, the back, the belly also expand. And then you exhale. You could either just let it all relax as you exhale, or the way that we often do in yoga is push that air out from the base of the throat, same spot. Just kind of like if you've got your hand and you could do this with your hand, bring it up to your mouth and go like you're doing an H sound. And that is pushing that air. You can feel it more of a conscious pushing. I think of like a push broom in a gym after a basketball game or something. You're just pushing it away and getting all of that air back out, making room for fresh air. So even just slowing down the breath, like we've done in these, I don't know, 2 minutes, is very calming for the nervous system. It also allows you to, you're focusing on something else. You're noticing what's happening within yourself. And then you can take it like I said, you might have noticed sounds in, if you're outside or driving in your car or whatever, you're noticing and you're not reacting. So even if you notice somebody honks at you because they're mad, because they think, I want you to move over, I don't want you in that lane. If you're able to notice that instead of be jolted by it, react by it, you'll stay in that calmer state. So that's one of the great things about getting into the slower mode of breathing. Wasn't really my reasoning here, but if you're in a stressful situation, that can be helpful because then you can notice other people. You can get curious about them. How are they breathing? Are they relaxed or are they breathing really fast? Is that person who's upset with me getting a little intense? What's happening in their shoulders? What's happening in their face? If they're tensed up, their shoulders will go up, their face, their mouth will get more tight. When we relax, we do the opposite. We relax in the jaw, relax in the mouth, relax in the shoulders. So even observing things about ourselves, if you can't breathe slower, maybe you can just relax in your shoulders some more. Or if you're driving a car, maybe you can just loosen your hand grip on that steering wheel. All those things will help relax you. Even if you're sitting on your couch with a bunch of people and whatever reason you're just not enjoying it, just relaxing in your hands, noticing your own breathing for a little bit, and then you can notice whatever else is happening with you or around you. And my greatest experience with all of this has been learning that I could use this to appreciate where I am, appreciate the people I'm around. And if you're on your couch, maybe it's somebody else's couch. Maybe you don't have a house where people come gather. You're somewhere else and your brain is somewhere else. So you're not enjoying it. You're thinking, I have to leave here in a half hour and we haven't eaten yet and blah, 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 or whatever you're thinking about. Or I hope my child doesn't get into that, whatever. You're not enjoying the experience. Your brain is thinking of all these different things. So there are so many ways that you can let go of all the things that are happening in your mind so you can actually enjoy where you are. My first time that I recognized this, I was in my own house. I believe it was Christmas time, and my older kids were home from college. One of my daughters was married with children. All these people were there, which to me was the pinnacle of the year. Everyone's here. This is the best. This is the best. My favorite ever, right? But I wasn't relaxed. I wasn't enjoying it. My brain was going and doing all these other things. And I sat there and I thought, just breathe for a minute. And I know that's like, a trite in quote things, just breathe. But it wasn't like I was saying, just take a breath, relax. It wasn't that. It was more just notice your breathing for a second. I noticed my breathing. And as I slowed down my breathing, not only was I taking in oxygen and new air, I was taking in my experience. I looked around and thought, yeah, this is what I've been planning for. This is what I love. And looked at each person, was able to absorb what they were saying, doing, enjoy it more, see them in all their amazingness, but also recognize which thoughts needed to go away. The thought of, oh, should I be in the kitchen making something? What are we going to eat next? Should I go find sheets for them? They're going to sleep in that room. And I thought, let all that stuff go, send it away. Someone else can do it. Or when it's a little bit later, you can ask them to help you. It doesn't have to be all you, you know. So whatever thoughts come up that are interfering with an experience you're having, it could just be at home doing your day-to-day stuff. It could be a grand moment. You're at your daughter's wedding or your wedding and you're not enjoying it because you're thinking of all the things that aren't working out or that are supposed to work out or that need to still happen or managing other people. Just doing that little bit of breathing, even if it's just for a minute, it doesn't have to have a time frame. It's just another way to help yourself, help your brain, your mind calm down and be happier. That's what we want, right? Happier, happiness. Anyway, I always say these in my mind before I come up here, do my podcast. This will probably be a shorter one. It's not. I hope you're okay with that. I swear. I always try to think of what do people want, what works for them. I need to tell myself to let go of that. But I really am enjoying the longer episodes. They do take a little while to put up and send out. And so, doing a longer one makes it so I only do that once instead of two shorter ones. But I really do think with women with ADHD, we look for things to listen to so we can quiet our minds a little bit so we can get some things done. That's, obviously, I guess the thing I didn't mention today is just putting in some earbuds where you can take your phone with you around the house. Maybe you lose it from time to time. I sure do. But that's another way to quiet the mind is just to put somebody else's thoughts in there and calm down. My son actually told me his doctor, my son who also has ADHD, he actually told me that the reason that listening to a show, a podcast, an audiobook, even a TV show, I don't even have to see, who it is. I could just listen on my phone. That the reason it helps us be more productive is not what I thought, although I think it could be a combination. Mine is that it helps me stop thinking of my own thoughts so much or stop thinking of things that need to be done, and then I can just focus on that one thing. But he said it's a stimulant, just like, a medication, ADHD medication or caffeine or something. He said that people with ADHD, this is what his doctor told him, and I am the least scientific person. I got good grades with science, but as far as remembering anything to say to you, I would never be able to say it right. But the basic thing is for most people who don't have executive dysfunction, I'm just putting my hand up like to my chest right now. So if you could see it, most people, they're at this level, and in order to get themselves to do something, they just have to go up one step. They go boop, and then there, and they get it done. People with ADHD, they're down lower than that level. And I'm going to go down like 3 steps from that level. And they're trying to get themselves to do it. They're trying to get themselves to do it. And they not only have to get as high as the people who just need a little motivation, they have to go way high. He said that the stimulants bring us up to the same level as the people without executive dysfunction. And then you just have to, boop, say, okay, now I'm going to go in here and do this. And he said that listening to something is actually a stimulant. Really? Who knew? Maybe you already knew that. Oh my goodness. Thank you for going on this little expedition with me with all the thoughts I had in my mind about all the thoughts in your mind. I hope something was helpful for you today. I'm not sure what I'm going to talk about next. I usually have an idea sparked by the current episode. So maybe a surprise. The only thing I can think of right now is maybe talking a little bit more about how yoga can help people with ADHD. If you're curious about that, I don't know if most people with ADHD are curious about that. It seems like a lot of people resist yoga. So even though that's my great, that's where I've been educated the most since I majored in English. That's where I have the most to share. I don't know how interested you are in it, but I may just do a little something on here next time. If not, it'll be a surprise. Woohoo! Yay for surprises. But until then, feel free to go to my website, reneeallen.com, with a little dash in between Renee and Allen. And I have been updating that. I even updated my podcast art, if you haven't noticed. I'm trying to figure out how to get it to blend more with what I had on my website, and I keep changing my website because that is just another way to hyper-focus, and it is fun. But feel free to go there. There are opportunities there to get some free content, free handouts. There's a favorite things handout where you could do a little quiz on there and learn more about what things give you joy that you could add into your life. I'm still working on the ADHD discovery tool. It's a self-assessment for ADHD, going through each of the categories or parts of executive dysfunction that we have and exploring where you're affected the most and how that affects you. Just another way to help you on this journey and to be curious about yourself. And then I've also made a few things for yoga. One is 5 tips for doing yoga with ADHD. Another one is a yoga for scattered minds video. It's maybe 40 minutes. I'm trying to remember. And there's a shorter one. There's a 30-minute one. I think it's lie down and let go. It's just kind of an end of the day. These are all free things that I have. Eventually, I'm going to make some bigger courses, but that can wait. It'll probably wait till after I travel after the 4th of July. But anyway, thank you for being here. Feel free to say hello. There's a contact form, or if you sign up for any of my freebies, that will come to you through email. Then we can be in touch on email. I'd love to hear about you, how your ADHD is helping you in your life or is a challenge in your life. It is a little of each for me. But thanks so much for being here. Bye.
Double chins, rubber ducks, squeaky cheese and paper cups, applesauce, Superman, rocket ships and Peter Pan, boogie boards and parachutes and soda cans, jumping jacks and pillowcases for my hands, Donald Duck and fire trucks and Pokemon, Santa Claus and Johnny Depp and Donkey Kong, chocolate chips and zipper zips and 914, little children jumping on the trampoline, model trains and passing lanes and super glue, tangerines and magazines and kangaroo.
Oh yeah. Daily Rock.
Rewind, I've run out of time to sing melodies and harmonies. I'm cut short, the silence of sound has yet been found, but not by me.